Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Petty and Ill-Informed podcast, where we venture our petty and ill-informed opinion over such topics, whatever we see fit. Joining me, as always, last week there was obviously some objections to this, so this week we'll start with Tom. How are you, Tom?
Yeah, doing all right. School's been pretty busy as it always is. We had yet another strike because what the British government are offering us is far less than what they're getting in Scotland and Wales, in terms of both the salary, the pay rise offered, and the extent to which they're prepared to fund it, and which is prepared they say must come out of an existing school budget. It's on both counts, it's better in other parts of the United Kingdom. So we were on strike on Thursday, but as my son had managed to get into a scrap and had a fractured finger when he fell onto the ground as a result, we had spent much of the strike day on a trip to sunny Margate, where we were in the fracture clinic. But all's well, he's healing just fine. Hopefully the school are dealing with it. And it's very much life going on as normal.
Who started the punch-up?
Well, Dan said it was 90% the other person and 10% him. But they do, I believe, have the incident on CCTV. And I need to catch up with my darling wife as to how much of that backs up said assigned percentages.
Yes.
Yeah, your son was the aggressor.
He only punched him first, and then the other guy punched the crap out of him. No.
No idea.
Let me ask you a question, Tom. How long? So, had he gone to A&E when you figured out that he had a broken finger?
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife had to go to the school and meet him there.
And took him to the hospital, and then they referred him to the fracture clinic, or they just sent him straight to the fracture clinic?
It was a couple of days later. We had an appointment.
Oh, okay. So, all right. I was just curious about that. So, how was your week, Richard? Oh no, wait, Tom. I've got a question for you.
Yeah, go on.
No.
How did the wee guy take the alligator? Did you give him the wee squishy alligator crocodile?
I took it in. It was basically commandeered by other children. Thanks for remembering. But and one kid was mucking around with it so much. One of my teaching assistants helpfully hid it, but I'm not sure where it's disappeared to.
So it's gone to the depths of the Amazon. Then might as well be.
Well, figuratively, yes.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
I was just questioning because you said last week you didn't know what the reaction would be, and being a previous teacher myself, I knew that you were right on the money by predicting one of three things.
He did like it. I don't think he threw it across the room straight away, bless him. But no, he did like it. But some of the other kids got hold of it pretty quick.
Yeah, scrap for it. Did you? Yeah. Okay, Richard, what happened in your week?
My week was pretty tame. Just got up to usual Richard stuff. Did a lot of work. Had a bit of a problem in the bathroom again, but it's all sorted now. Yeah, pretty easy week. Oh, Tom, you're going to love this.
Go on.
I'm in an attempt to lose weight. I've got, you're going to laugh at me, but I've got real problems with how heavy I am because I was a big boy when I was a kid. I got bullied a lot, and now I'm like really sensitive about how much I weigh.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying really hard to lose weight recently, and I've gone on a strict, almost vegan diet.
Wow.
To do it. I've got a book, a vegan plant-based food book.
Wow. And
I've been cooking recipes out of that. It's not totally vegan. I'm still using eggs and cheese. So, I'm still doing my bit to keep animals oppressed and stuff. And, of course, I had a big meat pizza last Sunday, which sort of ruined the whole week's efforts. But, there was every animal was on that. So I feel like, I could have the best of both worlds now.
Well, yeah, eating less is always good and valuable to me. So, yeah, nice one.
Are you drinking enough water?
No, drinking water is always a big problem for me. I try. I've got it set up so I've got this measuring jug, and in the morning I'll have 500 milliliters of water, and I measure it. And I'm like,
Right.
drink this now, and then at lunchtime I have another 500, and then at dinner time I have another 500. But
Right.
you're supposed to drink 2 liters, and I'm only drinking 1,500. So
Yeah. Well,
Well, that's still a lot.
yeah. Well, I have always found that British people on the whole are totally dehydrated most of the time. I mean, like the amount of water I drank as a kid is just like nothing. You know what I mean? I don't. I just didn't drink water that much at all. I mean, everything came in tea. You know what I mean? We use tea for everything, but still, and that's water. But with the caffeine in it as well, it dehydrates you. And I just think, from a lot of times when you're changing your diet and things like that, the fact that you become dehydrated actually, you know, slows the process down as far as losing weight.
yeah,
Your body hangs on to it. So
but I'm just terrible at drinking water. I mean, I've tried one time drinking 2 liters all at once, and that just didn't end well at all.
no, no, you don't want to try to do that because realistically, your gut can't absorb that anyway. When we were in the sort of desert, they said, your body can't process more than a liter of water an hour. So that actually goes into the rest of it, just spills out. You know what I mean? So there's no point in drinking 2 liters at the same time. So that's what I'm saying. So if
And you can also kill yourself doing that because you can poison yourself by drinking too much water.
that's right. That's right. And people don't realize that you can overhydrate.
Yeah, it happened to people who've had too many drugs or too much ecstasy, and then they drink far too much water to try and compensate and stabilize their body. And they can literally die of water on the brain and stuff like that. It's terrible.
Well, I think the problem with ecstasy is that it makes you so thirsty. That's the problem with you. You take a lot of ecstasy. I remember being at the Belfast City Hall at a rave in like the 1990s, and somebody had brought ecstasy tabs, and like people were in the bathrooms, taking the lid off the cisterns, in the toilet.
Oh my god!
I mean, it was really really bad. I mean, for people in America, imagine taking the lid off your toilet tank and then drinking that water straight out of there.
Well, I've never taken ecstasy, and I never intend to. Oh,
Yeah.
no thanks.
Well, of your list of top 5 drugs you'd like to get messed up on, is that not on it?
There aren't 5 drugs I'd like to get messed up.
Oh,
on.
come on, Tom.
Oh, come on, Tom.
You've got to have a list of 5 things.
Well, okay, if I reach some stupid age, like 80 or something,
Okay.
then I'm and I had nothing to lose. No,
Wait. You mean you never did anything when you were a teenager?
a couple of things, but not much.
Okay, no, let's put it this way. Hypothetically, in a world with no consequences, and you don't have to worry about your job, you don't have to worry about your family. I mean, this is the main reason not to do things, because you worry about your family. You worry
Guys,
about your job.
I'm sorry, it's silly to ask me this. I have to speak as if my executive principal were listening. I have to.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't.
Your job's in jeopardy if we talk about this stuff.
No, I understand.
So it's just no point in asking me.
Yeah.
Because
So,
My top 5 list is pretty simple, Kevin. It's just cocaine, 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 and cocaine.
yeah.
Of all the drugs I've ever experimented with, cocaine is by far the most incredibly awesome. I only did it like 3 times, and I was like, okay, I can never ever touch this stuff again, or I'm going to get addicted, because it is fantastic.
I mean,
But,
can you describe what it does? Because I literally have not taken it ever.
Imagine drinking 1,000 energy drinks and then a big jug of raw coffee on top of that.
Okay.
That sounds
It- it-
terrible, mate.
It just makes you jump all over the place. You've got all this energy. You're climbing off the walls. It was fantastic. I loved it. I
Yeah.
could totally see why people get addicted and sell things and their bodies to fund more cocaine. But as I said, I did it 3 times. I was like, okay, I can never do this again.
Right.
Well, kudos to you for drawing a line.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Because many people can't and don't, and can end up kidding themselves and on an addiction spiral. Some people I know can be like functioning addicts for. I mean, the certain industries are notorious for it. I mean, I don't know how much truth there is in it, but I think the theatre and the art worlds are meant to be pretty riddled in drug use and cocaine use. I think music probably is. From what I used to read in Kerrang magazine and stuff like that. That was, I mean, all kinds of. I'm reading Dave Mustaine's autobiography at the moment. He is the guy who was there in the early days of Metallica, and sort of notoriously he was thrown out for the amount of fights he started and the amount of drugs he was taking. And then he founded Megadeth and reached almost as bigger heights, arguably. I mean, I'm a big fan of both bands, basically. The amount of drugs those guys were on is absolutely crazy. They had to, on the tour of their first album, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, they had to. I've just been reading reading about it. They call it getting well. To score heroin is to get well, and every day had to start with getting well. It was terrible, and these guys were some seriously talented musicians who'd be beating the crap out of each other on all kinds of drugs, totally gratuitous orgies, and still managed to get up on stage and shred like hell.
Is there anything? Is there any kind of non-gratuitous orgies?
There's just like reasonable orgies where like everybody pairs off, and they've got like tea and crumpets served, and they keep the neighbors down so they don't bother them. They keep the sound down so they don't bother the neighbors.
Right. I'll do it, but I don't feel good about it.
Well, could you have a romantic orgy?
Everybody just gather around. We're going to have a non-gratuitous orgy.
Yes.
There's going to be rigid rules put in place, and I expect all of you to follow them at all times. We are not hedonists. We're not death metal rockers. We're going to do this dignified and with a British stiff upper lip.
That's right.
God! Imagine, you know that famous British comedy scene from Harry Enfield. Those sort of mock advice videos from like the 1940s that they look like. The one where they do Grayson's Guide to Conjugal Rights. Do you know the one I mean? Have you seen it, guys?
Yes.
I'm not going to lie to you, Tom. I have never found Harry Enfield funny at all, and I've never watched hardly any of his stuff.
Well, yeah, I get what you mean. Some of his stuff really is obvious and repetitive and dull. But this one was one where they really did get it right. They did this. Here's your guide to conjugal rights after it's presented in that the Queen's English accent. It's just so funny. I must find a YouTube link and paste it in the chat or something. It really is funny. I'll do that now.
I'm going to draw your attention, for an example, to Kevin and Perry from Harry Enfield and Chums. Not only was that boring and repetitive, they made the most unfunniest, based, boring-ass movie from those two I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I've no interest in doing it. It is meant to be boring as hell.
Can I just go back to a point that I think we missed? I think Richard's porn name should be Rigid Rule. We're going to have a Rigid Rule, Richard. There we go. I know. I lost the moment, didn't it?
My porn name would be Squires Bob.
Squires Bob.
Squires Bob.
Tom's in the middle of looking for something now.
No, I am not porn. I'm finding the.
I mean, we could reverse it. It could be
Right.
Bob Squires.
Bob Squires does sound like that. Bob Squires does sound like
That's a porn name, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'll go with that. Bob
or
Squires.
somebody that was in a rock band in the 1970s.
Bob Squires. Yeah.
Bob Squires.
That's how you do it. You take the first name of your first pet and the street name. That's how you make porn names.
There's all those stupid rules. You know, your Red Dwarf name, your wrestler name, your rock star name, and they're all daft things. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
come up with a better porn name than Bob Squires, Tom.
Yeah, and that's the point of it, Tom, is that it's ridiculous. It's just a bit of fun. Just a bit of fun.
you know, you could. I don't know, guys. Let's see what our imaginations can come up with. Fill in the blanks. Your blank name is your, and then blank blah 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 blank blah blah blah. You know, it's two really daft things from some point, something to do with yourself, like your pet's gran or something. Yeah, that you know what I mean. I'm going to see what I can come up with, and you guys are welcome to do the same. This will probably end in disappointment, but hey.
My pet's gran.
I'm going to see if I can come up with one, and then you might know. At least you might then have half an idea of what I'm talking about and doing a very bad job of articulating.
Right.
Yeah.
What would your wrestler name be, Tom? The Displeased Cad.
Oh no,
Breaker.
I think your your favorite nickname for me is would probably be a great wrestling name. I can really see it as a Vince McMahon gimmick. Would be if I went on as a wrestler with your favorite nickname for me, Richard.
Which my face? Cunt face.
No, vegan hipster douche.
Oh yeah, that would be a good.
If he was trying to go after, like an actor, he could be Vegan Price.
Well, you could then initialize it like RVD did, Rob Van Dam. You know, it even has a V, VHD. Yeah, as opposed to PH. Yeah, as opposed to PH.
Like a venereal disease.
Exactly. I don't think anything with VD in it.
No, it sounds like
VHD. That is a perfect wrestler name for you, Tom.
VHD. It sounds like virtual high definition or something really cool in that tech. But it's
what would his signature
vegan
move
hipster
be?
douche.
His
What
signature
would
move
his
be?
signature move be? He'd knock them to the ground, sit on, put a stool over them, sit down, and pull out his history book and start reading from it.
No, just because that's what
The Battle of Stalingrad was long and brutal.
as is, but not as long and brutal as me trying to wax lyrical about it.
Yes.
Wasn't that the one where I got busted in the hotel corridor and had to go and finish off in the toilet, sounding really, really suspicious while I did?
What did you just say? Just go finish off in the toilet, Tom?
Yes, no, that's what I did.
Run the sentences through your brain before your mouth.
Yes.
Well,
I got busted in the hall.
No, that's what I
You
said.
had to finish off in the
Okay.
toilet.
Now listen.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said at the time. Don't you remember? I'm pretty sure I was either doing I was doing one of two podcasts. It was either the Battle of Stalingrad or it was the guy. No, it wasn't that one. I did that from here. It was the guy who prevented World War III during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was doing that one, and they came to with 10 minutes of the show left. This was only a couple of last summer, I think, and they came to tell me off and give me a bollocking for being so loud. And then I just went, I'll just go, and I said to like you guys, all the listeners, I said, I'm just going to go and finish up in the toilet, which just sounded dodgy as hell, but I meant finish the bloody podcast.
Right. So let me as an audio guy, listen to the clip I just came up with. I got busted do it in the hall. They came and gave me a bollocking, so I finished it up.
Fanar. Carry on, matron.
Yes, and so, but what I was going to say is, whenever we come up with the new, whenever they come up with a new theme song, I got busted in the hall and had to finish myself off in the toilet. Has definitely got to be on there. Richard, that soundbite is pure gold, mate. Pure gold. It's going to go to number one on the charts.
We've gone ahead in time stamping this in the podcast.
I love the idea of me having a special move. I'd need to think of what it would be.
I just told you that you're never going to beat, the what's a good name for that? The speech maker.
The speech maker.
Bore people to death with the. It's got to be something to do with
the reciter. There we go. That's what you call it.
The reciter. Why? Because I sit there and bore people to death while drinking.
Yeah, because you knock them to the ground, you put a stool over them, you sit down and you pull out your book and you start talking, and they just pass out and the ref counts them out.
That's pretty good. Bore them to death.
The reciter. I love it. Love everything to do with it.
I don't know. How about the Bory story?
No, I don't like that at all.
Okay. This is a pretty miserable attempt at rhyming, I'll give you.
But what I'm saying is that seems too much like Jackanory. That seems like you should be a presenter on children's television. The Bory story. It's got to be something with a little bit of zhuzh to it. You got to zhuzh it up, Tom.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sold on just that, the Jackanory.
The Jackanory. That's right. Yeah, that's good.
That works. Yeah, my special move is the Jackanory. But I want what would it actually be?
Well, I don't know, but if you can't do it in the ring, you can finish it off in the toilet. The jack and
the jack off and a hammer.
The jack off and Ori.
Okay.
God, someone retrieve us from the gutter, please. Oh.
You literally brought this on yourself. All right. I don't want to hear it.
See what happens whenever you say, "Oh yeah, well this week I should probably go first."
Okay, Kevin. I don't know if we've even bloody asked how your week is.
No, I had a great week, and it's already half past, so that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, man. So if you want to start with your first man of genius, Tom.
Okay, I'm going to go with Alexander the Great.
Who
was
what was his signature move?
His signature move was I can tell you his signature move. It was spearheading the cavalry personally and being the first to storm city walls during a siege. Very reckless of his own safety, but he seriously walked the walk, which very few military commanders would have had the bravery to do. Well, not just the bravery, the audacity and the lack of sense to do, because you put yourself and you get yourself killed, and your army's without its leader. It's incredibly risky.
Which is what happened and led to one of the worst civil wars that literally destroyed Macedonia. But okay, no, he was a genius.
Yeah, but I was saying is what. The lead from the front thing is a very dangerous thing. That's all I'm saying. I agree with Tom on that because,
so he was an adrenaline junkie. That doesn't make him a genius.
But what did was the way he would sort of invent tactics to outwit armies that were much larger than him. He when one of the Persian armies. Well, I'm only going on a Discovery Channel documentary I watched on this ages ago. But when his forces were lined up against the Persians, they were much smaller in number, but they weren't sure what he was doing, and he kept moving his lead cavalry unit, the companions, left to right, and then eventually he attacked them diagonally, and he was able to disable their chariots by forming these little U-shaped pockets in his lines, and they would form when a and it would cause the horse to stop, and they'd be able to they would more often than not be able to disable chariots. So if he didn't personally invent these tactics, which many people think he did, he was certainly able to organize his troops with incredible efficiency to be able to do this kind of thing. It's the kind of sort of synchronization you'd see in fiction more than in fact, the way they would make these pockets in their lines to trap chariots. But apparently he did it, and his armies did it, and it worked. They were able to. The Greek Empire stretched all the way through Persia to India. It was incredible.
Macedonian.
Yeah, sorry, but it was brilliant, and so that's why wasn't without his faults, and he didn't leave much of a creative legacy in his wake when he died. There wasn't anything particularly special culturally about him, but he was still quite the legend for these military successes.
My main thing that I like about Alexander the Great was the ego on him. He conquered 13 cities, named them all Alexandria, except for one in Turkey, which he called Ascrution, which is Turkish for Alexandria.
Yes, Sikander, Sikander. But the thing that what I find interesting about Alexander the Great is that that he went halfway across the Egyptian desert to see an oracle, who then confirmed that he was like a god, and then he just lived like that from that point on. I'm sure the guy didn't have any sort of say in whether he was going to determine that he was a god, but that's interesting.
He was poisoned by his own men after they mutinied because they refused to conquer any more lands for him. They reached the river Ganges and they were like, "No, we're done, bro. We're going home. All right, we're done."
But these people had been, a lot of them were away for years and years and years. I mean, it's not like he just conquered all these places overnight, It's like, I got a wife. I want to go home. It's been 7 years. Can I go home? You know what I mean? I don't think people really understand in a lot of ways how these ancient armies either worked. If you were, sometimes you would have this sort of part-time army, or you'd have like mercenary groups. But, if you were in certain armies, you were just, I think, what was it? You had to be in the Roman army for 20 years and then you could get out. No, it wasn't, if you were a legionnaire for 20 years, I would imagine that you'd be wrecked anyway by the standards of the day. Being 38 in Roman times, I'm sure, wasn't a great time.
No.
And so, so you go home and you become a Roman citizen or whatever. They give you your wee parcel of land and live for a couple years, and then you croak. Great. I mean,
such is life. Well, and life, or death, whatever.
Yes.
Point is, Tom reckons he was a genius. I disagree. Kevin, where do you stand?
Well, obviously, you see, this is the question that we come up with. Was he a politician, a general, or a genius? I mean, obviously, there are aspects of his behavior that were genius, but the fact that you're a politician, maybe, or good at politician, doesn't mean that you're necessarily a genius. We do have examples of people who are great politicians, for example, and not necessarily thought of as the smartest people in the world. But from an emotional standpoint, yes. That's why they always come up with this idea of EQ now versus IQ. Your emotional quotient or intelligence quotient. And sometimes you can relate very well to people and be very charismatic and everything like that, but you're not really smart, or vice versa. So that's an odd one. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we have to talk about maybe at some point is what's a genius. If you look back over history, at one point in time, I mean, genius comes from the derivation of a Roman word where that basically meant local god at one point in time. So in other words, a genius was somebody around, your area that was thought of as, being not divine, but a demigod. You know what I mean? Having an intelligence and an effect on that group of people. So a lot of times, if you go to Roman villas and stuff like that, you would see what was called a statue of a genius, just a local sort of hero. What what we would refer to in Christianity as a patron saint of whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Local areas have that sort of a thing. So as time goes on, and these geniuses could be men or women, of course. But then we come to the age of enlightenment, and we forget that women can be geniuses. And 1,500 years into Christianity, which is a very patriarchal religion, and women can't be geniuses anymore. So the interesting thing about it is that one of the things that we were talking about last week is that there's not a lot of women geniuses, and I think that's because of the fact that in the 1800s, for example, it wasn't considered that women could be genius, whether you were using these pseudoscience things like women's cranial capacities and phrenology and these different ideas that would say, oh yeah, women can't be geniuses. Although what was interesting in it to me is, as from an anthropology background status would say, is a lot of geniuses sort of have the stereotypical characteristics of women. In other words, that that geniuses have imagination, and one of the reasons why they didn't think that women should read books in the 1800s was because that women's imagination would take them to different places that a man who is a more logical character wouldn't go to if they were reading fictional novel, for example, or that geniuses were prone to hysteria or excitableness, whereas a logical, rational man wouldn't be. And so, and so it's kind of an interesting thing where imagination and creativity and sort of uh, bouts of inspiration in some ways are what we stereotypically call a woman's trait. However, women couldn't be geniuses. So it's only until you get to like the early 1900s that women were even considered to be sort of genius. And so, that's what I'm saying is that how do we define what a genius is? And I agree with Tom in the fact that Alexander the Great did some really, really smart things and great things. So he was obviously a very, very well-rounded person at times. I mean, I think he was probably a narcissist and things like that too. But from a military standpoint, he was very, very smart. From obviously from a motivational standpoint, he was very, very good at it. Because but I mean, according to science now or whatever, the way that they define genius, it just basically means what's your IQ? What's your IQ? Pass this test, you're a genius. Great. What does that mean?
I think for the purposes of this conversation, a genius is someone that we personally admire or look up to.
Right. Okay. No problem. All right. John Cena.
Ba, 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 ba.
Genius. Okay, but you had another story, Tom.
Oh, what? Another genius?
Yeah. You were going to talk
we're
about
doing one each, and then we'll get back to it.
No, but I thought he was going to talk about the time you met Stephen Hawking in the toilet.
Not toilets again.
Well, yeah, and then he had to finish him off.
Oh God! All right. Okay. So I was going to the other genius that I was going to talk about is Stephen Hawking. There is a very good film called The Theory of Everything about Stephen Hawking. I've seen it once. I'll probably grab it and one for keeps next time I'm in a charity shop. Or we're not going to see one in a charity shop.
Wasn't that good then?
It's pretty darn good. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, something like that. So it's Stephen Hawking is somebody who is renowned for the brilliance of his mind, though it's very difficult for the layman or the lame man like I am to understand very much about what he believed and what he thought. I do know that he was somebody who championed the idea that black holes could emit radiation, and that's something which was very controversial because it was believed that nothing could escape from a black hole whatsoever, but he believed something called Hawking radiation could escape from it, which, as far as I understand it, and Gabby, correct me if I'm wrong, or either of you gents, because black holes emit this radiation, it's something that means they are not infinite in their existence. They do have an expiry date of their own. The idea, basically what I'm getting at is that made it possible for people to come up with a theory of the heat death of the universe, which is absolutely delightful and states that all matter will eventually collapse. All life will die in the universe eventually. In I don't know how many billion or trillion years they think it will take. But all life will die. All way of sustaining life will die. All matter will break down completely. And in the end, all that will be left in the universe is black holes. And because black holes emit this radiation after heaven knows what length of time, a length of time that we cannot imagine, or come close to imagining, black holes will all eventually burn themselves out. And then time will effectively stop because the universe will be an unchanging, floating sea of unmoving
Jesus.
Positrons, or I think they're called, and that's just there will be nothing, basically, just nothing and nothing, and always eternally nothing. That's what they theorize, and I think it's Hawking's radiation that made that possible. I could be wrong about that.
That is horrific. But I suppose if I spent 60% of my life in a wheelchair, I'd be a miserable bastard as well.
Right, but isn't that just the idea of, for example, of the Big Bang in reverse? I mean, you go through
not in reverse. It doesn't contract to a singularity.
Well, that's what you're saying is that if the end of, and I'm not going to get into a big philosophical debate about it, but obviously, if the universe starts from nothing, a black hole by definition has to have an end point. Unless you're talking about the idea that the universe is then infinite. So an infinite amount of something comes from nothing. I mean, that's pretty hard to wrap your mind around, Dan. But if the very fact that if the universe is infinite, then you can't go outside infinity. So either a black hole has to go to another part of the universe, or sort of that wormhole effect, if you're going to become, obviously, if you're talking about black holes, the idea of spaghettification actually bothers me more than the cold death of the universe.
Oh, do you mean the idea of multiverses and things like that?
Well, no. What I'm saying is that if the universe is infinite, then by definition, there can't be an end point to, you know what I mean? How if a black hole is inside the universe and the universe is infinite, I mean, how can the black hole be infinite as well? I mean, I'm not quoting that right. I'm not saying it right, but I'm just saying that, that the idea of, I think that a lot of people agree with the idea that the universe is constantly expanding, which is a weird thing. If the universe is infinite, how can it expand? But then it will reach a point where it will implode back onto itself and actually go to nothing again. In other words, at some point in time, something was created from nothing, it blew up, and then it's going to go back to it's like a rubber band. It'll expand out, come back, reform into whatever it is, and disappear. It's sort of this idea of the Big Bang Theory. So I mean, it's an interesting concept. A lot of people in different belief systems think that God thought the universe into existence. Hence, the Big Bang is not inconsistent with that. Something came from nothing, and at some point in time, we don't know what God is, and so it might just fall back onto itself. I don't know.
When we're into this depth of theoretical physics, I think it's almost futile to contemplate.
Oh no, it's futile. But that's the way I always look at it, from my standpoint. If you can't beat him with brains, baffle him with bullshit. I've always thought of that. Richard,
Yeah, makes sense to me.
who's your genius, man?
My genius. Well, for my genius, we got to go to the late 1700s, early 1800s for the pirate queen Anne Bonny.
Oh yeah,
That's someone I admire a great deal. She lived the life she wanted to, and she lived happily ever after. Had like 8 kids. Retired on an estate. She got caught pirating. Her entire crew got hung, except for her, because her daddy was rich. So she got away with everything and retired from pirating and lived happily ever after. Big fan of hers. And
So
she was a terror of the seas.
She grew up in some place in South Carolina, right? Was it
Ireland.
Savannah? Oh, she grew up in Ireland. It was
she
the other
born in
one.
Ireland, moved to the Americas when she was like 9.
Yeah.
And then became a pirate queen.
Her father was some bigwig in some town, I think. And so Colin and she ran away. Well, who was it? She became a pirate with Captain Jack Rackham. I always liked that name, And Anne Bonny, and what was the other name of the other pirate queen that was with her? There was 2 that they met each other at one point in time. Obviously, one of the Anne Bonny, one of the most famous transvestites in history. Dressed up like a man.
Yeah.
And
but she didn't tell it. She didn't pretend she was a man. She just dressed like a man.
She did pretend. No, dude, she did pretend she was a man because
although
she was having a sexual, she was in the Jack. She was jacking Jack Rackham. It was she dressed like a man to try to, because the story was, and this is the way I heard it anyway. Being 200 years later, that it was Anne Bonny. Was it Anne Bonny and the other? I can't remember. They were on the pirate ship before together, and they were unsure that each other were male or female.
Mary Read.
Yeah, that they didn't know each other that they were on the ship together, and they didn't realize that each other was a female. And so they figured it out. And then at that point in time, they started to dress more like ladies. That because of the fact that at that point in time, having a woman on board a ship was bad luck. I don't know why that is. But for example, in the Royal Navy,
just the usual reasons. Am I right, men?
But then, so the frigates attack Jack Rackham's ship. They lose. The two ladies are taken to Jamaica, and put in jail. Jack Rackham is hung, but they both were pregnant, and so at that point in time in British law, a woman would plead what was called her belly, and so you couldn't hang or execute a lady if she wanted to give birth to the child before she was killed. And in that time, she wrote to her father, who was a bigwig, and he wrote to the governor of Jamaica and basically got her off. And then she went back to South Carolina or whatever, lived her life out. Whereas the other one got hung because she didn't have any connections.
No, she didn't get hung. She died of fever.
Oh, died of the. What's the difference?
She died in prison, to be fair. But
Well, yeah,
Anne Bonny
okay, she died in
Like,
prison.
she never ever pretended she was a man. She dressed like a man, but she never pretended to be a man.
Oh, God.
That is
Okay. Yeah. Well,
that
I
is
mean,
historically backed up by many crew logs that she was very open about the fact she was a woman.
there was now one of them two actually had gone to Europe, and I can't remember which one it was. One of the two pirates had gone to Europe and actually fought in an army dressed as a man. And one of the things that was interesting about it is that she was in a regiment and then went to Belgium and bought a bar or something like that. And she was very, very popular in that bar because, who else is better than a lady that has war stories that they're talking to soldiers that have war stories, And so then she got bored and then became a pirate. And I mean, there's very interesting stories about the two of them, but there are several instances of women in the American Civil War dressing up as men and fighting in the war, for example, and the various things that you have to do to conceal the fact that you're a lady whenever you're doing that. It's very, very difficult. But obviously Mulan is a subject about that. The whole idea of a woman dressing up like a man. Damn Disney and their woke Mulan story.
I'm surprised that hasn't been cancelled yet for being transphobic.
I don't know where any of this is going, mate, with that. But I'm just saying is that
people get bored after a few years,
Yeah.
PC comes, PC goes.
All I'm saying is that from my perspective, you can't change the way that things are. I don't care unless you're living in a totalitarian 1984 society where you want to ban the fact that it never happened. I mean, if you want to ban that America never had slaves, or women never dressed up like men, or men never dressed up like women, or whatever you want to pretend that never happened,
Okay. Interesting.
Fantasy world.
Interesting, Kevin. So, the film that you guys have just called out was it Mulan?
Yeah, I like Mulan.
Okay. Now, what's going to be interesting is, I'm just going into Disney Plus now, and I'm going to find it because what they do is they put this disclaimer on about something being made with values that they now consider, inappropriate.
Oh God, I was just kidding. You're joking.
No, let's see. Mulan. Yeah. Let's see if it says it, because some of them do. I think when we watched Aladdin the other day, it did that. Let's see if it does it with Mulan.
What's un-PC about Aladdin?
There's a bird that talks in it.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, they haven't done it for.
I would think that Mulan would be a movie that you'd want to show, because it's about a girl who beats standard gender stereotypes and becomes whatever she wants to be.
Okay.
Because she wants to help her father.
I think the problem. I don't know it. I don't know. I'm only going on what you guys have said.
Yeah.
I know with Aladdin, the problem is, I think a lot of it is to do with its portrayal of Arabian people and culture. I would imagine.
Right.
It's that. Yeah. So want to try and find it if I can. It's just been a pain. It's hiding.
What's offensive about? I don't understand.
I'm not sure. I'd need to watch it again throughout to spot why, or what it is that
That's got Robin Williams in it, so that was.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that it was whitewashed, I mean, but can you even whitewash a animated movie? I mean, they were all the right color.
Well, where is Aladdin supposed to take place? I mean, is
Middle
that
East?
well, yeah,
it's
In Arabia.
the Middle East is big. That's all I'm saying. Is it like Iraq, Iran?
That's Arabia, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I suppose, yeah. Arabian Nights.
Yeah, Arabia.
Like Arabian Days.
I mean, yeah, Robin Williams' overacting of the genie was offensive, but that's how he did everything he did in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought it was. I liked it. I liked it. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at it from a standard.
Well, it wasn't Lilo and Stitch, the greatest Disney movie ever made, but yeah.
Well, if you look at it from that standpoint, is any of that historically accurate, or is it supposed to be?
Lilo and Stitch? No, probably not.
No, but
Aliens
what I'm saying
never
is,
invaded.
okay, look at Robin Hood, for example, where the fox is Robin Hood, and they've got Lion as King John and everything like that. I mean, I mean, it's not like I'm going to come up and say I'm a member of the Nottingham Antiquarian Society, and I just want to tell you that this is not an accurate representation of what it was like to live in 11th century Britain.
Well, Robin Hood never even existed in the first place. So.
Yeah, but what if he did? The Sheriff of Nottingham was a real character.
Guys, I've got it now. I've managed to grab a screenshot of it. It was on a countdown. I got it with 1 second to go. This is about Aladdin. This program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe. To learn more about how stories have impacted society, visit www.disney.com/stories matter. So there you go. I do think that is a very positive, wholesome, and forward-thinking approach to not to erase history, but to celebrate what's good about it and challenge what's wrong. I think because as opposed to that, the world you were describing, Kevin, with shades of 1984, there was a story about that in the news recently where Roald Dahl, a famous, one of the most famous children authors in the history of the world, if not the most. I used to love his books as a kid. They were recently, just a few months ago, reread by sensitivity readers who adapted the language to make it less offensive in 2023. And because it is very, at best, you can say it's very clumsily written.
Right.
Sort of associating an ugly appearance with, say, in the case of Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker in James and the Giant Peach, their ugly appearance is associated with their ugly core, which would be something that would be very discouraged from displaying in any sort of fiction now. But there was a big backlash against that. There's a lot of people, like you had my wife told me about a bald woman who said, look, there is nothing offensive in Roald Dahl's The Witches to bald women. Give history a break.
I think that.
And I think it was overturned.
Yeah.
The books were the future publishing of the books is going to be as they always were in Roald Dahl's original words, for better or for worse.
Right. And that's one of those things that you have to look at from the standpoint of, a lot of people say, okay, well, this is the PC crowd that's trying to overturn these books or whatever, limit the
Yeah.
books. And it's not necessarily. The conservative groups also now trying to ban books. I looked at it from this standpoint. Somebody sent me the list of books that were banned in school libraries in Florida today. And I was amazed and I laughed. And, somebody said, they said, why are you laughing? And I said, because 1984 is banned on the school books in public schools in Florida. I mean, it's like, if that's not beyond irony, you know what I mean? A book that's all about censorship and rewriting the past and everything like that is now banned because it's deemed to be offensive. I mean,
They always overreact to books like that, don't they?
Well, yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is hey, if you want to see
Yeah.
1984, you want to look at that book being banned, just hold up a mirror and look at yourself, mate. You know what I mean? That's probably. I mean, why do you want to ban that book? Because it offends you too much that somebody's already wrote a book about you?
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
yeah. What is the thinking behind that? I don't understand. Why would you ban 1984? I do not understand.
Well,
Yeah.
you see, this is the thing there. If the idea is, and I mean, don't ask me to defend, and I mean, you know what I mean? Me trying to defend the indefensible is not my thing. You know what I mean? It's just never has been and everything else. But
Cough, Matthew Johnson, cough.
well, yeah, well, no, I don't defend. But what I'm saying is, okay, I'm not going there. I'm not fighting the hook today, mate. I know what you're trying to do.
Damn it.
But anyway, all I'm saying is when you ban books like The Kite Runner and The Color Purple and these different things like that,
The Catcher
Well,
in the Rye.
yeah, I mean, and Mice and Men and things like that, and all these different books that have to do about struggles of peoples throughout the history of America and things like that, because you don't want to look at that as a way that it is. Because I mean, my understanding is that if it makes somebody could be offended by it in class, then they don't want to have it in class. So if you are trying to teach something that is about inequities, like all kinds of different books about I mean, most of these books are there to tell a story, of humanity. And whenever you can't tell a human story, there's really no point to it. I mean, there's no point. You might as well just, at that point in time, just have people read, whatever, a menu from a restaurant. It doesn't mean anything. Literature is not about, reading and writing. And as you know, Tom, as a teacher, literacy is not necessarily about just being able to recognize a word and know what it means. You know what I mean? That's not what literacy really is. It's to understand concepts and to be able to portray them to other people. And that's what it is. But I mean, again, it's basically all you're doing is pigeonholing these kids and wanting them to pass a standardized test and blah blah blah, spit them out in the street and say that's it, good for you. You know what I mean? I mean, but that's not an education. I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of lots of different standpoints. It's we're spitting them out for the corporate machine to take drones to put to work, and that's it. And anything more than that, you don't need to know. You know what I mean? You need to know how to go to work on the computer, type in numbers, turn it off, go home, watch Fox News, and do it again tomorrow. You know what I mean? That's what you need to do. Other than that, shut up.
The perfect civilization.
Exactly. Question nothing, even though, I don't know. I'm not going to say anymore.
All right. Well, on that bombshell, that'll wrap us up for this week. We will return next week, despite the hopes of many, where we'll be discussing people from history that irritate us. We'll go the other way.
Brilliant. That's a really good one.
All right then. So
Yeah.
it's good night from me, and it's good night from them. Good night.
Night,
Cheerio.
everybody.